Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Queerly Biz Podcast. My name's Kerry King and today we have...
Ben Greentree.
Ben Greentree.
Ben Greentree.
So, yes, episode 13. Now, you said 13 is your lucky number.
It is my lucky number.
So we're hoping that today turns out better than my day has started, which, quite frankly, is quite easy to be better than it started. So
I would ask, but is that going to be...
So my other job is as a dog groomer, and I went to my job at 8:30 this morning in Norwich and got there and realised that all my grooming equipment was in fact in my garden.
Kerry.
And I'd walked past it to get to my car, and then, bit embarrassed. So I've got to go back later.
It can only get better.
Now you say that, but then I got in my car to go, having said I'll come. I'm so sorry. I'll come back later. Got in my car to go, put it in gear, took the handbrake off. Thought, I'm not going anywhere. My keys were still in my pocket. I hadn't actually put them in the car and turned it on.
You'll be okay.
So I'm waiting for my number 3.
I was going to say, things happen in threes, but you'll be fine. Yeah. It's good.
So we're here for Queerly Biz for for Rainbow Assured. We also have producer Cal. Say hi.
Oh.
Oh. And right, so Ben, we know each other.
We do know each other.
We've known each other a couple of years now.
Yeah, 2 years, isn't it?
2 years.
2 years.
How do we know each other?
So we know each other because we are on Pride Committee. The Dereham does Pride Committee. Obviously, Dereham is a market town in the middle of Norfolk, quite a substantial market town.
Yep, and literally right in the middle of Norfolk.
Literally the heart of Norfolk, the Tesco car park. And we're on a Pride Committee together and have organised 2 festivals, days at the moment. A third one is in the making. And that's how we became acquainted.
And who are you on the committee?
So I'm the secretary, but I've also kind of taken on public relations, which social media, which is ironic because I'm not the most technologically advanced person there's ever been.
And actually, generally, I never see anything you post on Facebook. But I do see plenty of now.
I don't really post on Facebook. I use Instagram, I use Threads, but Facebook, I just share...
Threads? I've heard of Threads.
It's like Blue Sky or X, but for Instagram. And I love it because I love Instagram so much, and it's that. And it's more liberal than perhaps some of the other social media sites are getting now.
Certainly X. Okay. No, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, you should get on there. Get Queerly Biz on there.
I do need to get Queerly Biz on there.
You do.
Producer Cal, you might have to help me with that.
There you go. Job for the day.
Thank you. I'll just add another one to its list of ever-expanding job list. Now, I used to be chairperson for Dereham Does Pride for 2 years and then went, okay, I've sort of had enough of this. And Heather offered to step in. I've been trying to get Heather on the podcast and I haven't been able to. But you, on the other hand, were quite...
Well, this is quite surreal because I have followed the podcast since the first episode. I've watched every episode.
Oh,
I must be, well, I'm probably not, but the first fan who's on here, I don't know. I'm probably I'm sure all of your previous guests were fans, but no, it's I absolutely love this, and I think it's so important to raise and to have a voice to be able to get the word out there and discuss a variation of topics, some topics which are quite taboo, but that's good. I love that, and obviously I know you very well and I like you, so of course that matters as well. But no, I really like it.
And the thing about the taboo subjects are that people avoid talking about them, and therefore when they are then discussed, they stay taboo.
Absolutely.
They don't become familiar. They don't become. People are very hesitant to pass that uncomfortable stage to make it more comfortable to talk about, and that's what we're trying to encourage.
Absolutely. And I think with the Pride event that we organise, Norfolk is, let's be honest, a fairly conservative, traditional county, and that it is what it is. But I think there's an awful lot of people with a fixed mindset, and what we're trying to do is again, we're not throwing it in people's faces, are we? No. We're not saying, right, we are here and you have to go along with this. It's not about that, but it is about having a growth mindset. And I think, like with anything, the more you discuss something that is taboo, the more people will understand it and become familiar with it. And when people are familiar with something, well, it isn't an issue anymore.
Yes, exactly.
And it's just, society has always been on a journey. We're all on a journey, and society is changing. And if our ancestors had, if everyone had that fixed mindset, well, we'd be stuck in the dark times. We'd be in caves.
You wouldn't evolve.
No,
would you?
we would not. It's evolution, and it's societal evolution.
And we've had to change, and we've had to change the language that we use, which I'm obviously very pro changing language that we use, and you try and keep up to date with what's appropriate and what's friendly, and don't piss people off massively. I think the difference is if you can say something and be kind of jokey about it, or if you're going to say something and be a twat about it. If you're saying something to offend, then clearly that's not good.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you're saying something and perhaps you're not quite sure of the terminology, that's get roundable.
Absolutely. And you have to appreciate as well that, people come from a variety of different, socioeconomic backgrounds, and I mean, again, take where we are. We're in Norfolk, and there's quite a certain way of life here, and that's fine. But, I have a lot of straight friends, and, I remember before, especially after I first kind of went public, and one of my friends said something. He was, "Oh, sorry, Ben, I didn't mean to offend you." I'm like, I'm not offended because it wasn't meant maliciously, and at the end of the day, again, if you perhaps haven't been exposed to language terminology like this, well, then of course you're not going to. And I think that, I'm going to be honest, I think to a degree, sometimes it's easy to demonize people and to jump on that and go, well, you're ignorant and you don't care. When actually, I think that there are a lot of ignorant people there, but I think there's also a lot of people who actually they aren't familiar with it. And you just got to educate and familiarize, and suddenly it's not a problem.
One of the businesses I spoke to, might have been the year before last, had said that they don't understand it and therefore they completely avoid it because they don't want to get it wrong. But obviously that's not conducive to ever getting it right.
Absolutely.
If you completely avoid it. I want to just bring up, I haven't asked you your pronouns yet. Do you want to confirm your pronouns for me?
Yes, he, him, or they, them.
Excellent.
My answer to any.
I've realised that although I've always gone as she, her, I realised that more people are now using they, them for me, even though I haven't asked. I think it's because I'm in an LGBTQ workspace and people are concerned that they might be getting it wrong, so they kind of preempt it and call me they, them, which is absolutely fine with me.
Absolutely.
And I kind of feel like it applies to me. And I was thinking this morning that I have not a really androgynous look, but I'm quite androgynous. I'm 6 foot tall. I have short hair, lack of chesticles, and female version. And I thought, because this whole Supreme Court thing, which is hideous, and
great,
really polarizing different ends of the community. I was desperately been trying to think of a positive, something good that could come out of this Supreme Court ruling about women in single-sex spaces.
Absolutely.
The fact is, I get called sir on a fairly regular basis. People think I'm a bloke, or they think I'm perhaps non-binary. Mostly I get called sir a lot, as opposed to anything else. And I was thinking, if I went into a woman's toilets and they then said, well, you shouldn't be in here, because they perhaps thought I should have been in the male toilet, I could skip the massive queue for the ladies and just waltz into the men's toilet.
I know.
And then if they say I'm not supposed to be in there, you say, well, I've got to wee somewhere and there's a queue there and I want to get back to the theatre. So, can we just wee and have done with it? So
that's the silver lining.
Yeah, that's going to be my positive takeaway. I mean, ultimately, it's been awful, this, particularly obviously for the trans community.
Absolutely.
I went to a trans protest the other day in Norwich.
Yes, I wasn't part of the protest, but I was in Norwich anyway. Obviously, I live in Norwich, and I did see it, and I knew that you were there as well. And
RJ and Bev were there as well from our committee, and it was awesome. I couldn't hear everything that was going on from the talks because I'm not ever so sure that the sound system was amazing. We need to get Cal in there for them next time. But some of what they were saying was really rousing, really touching.
What was the reaction? What was the, as in, when I say what was the reaction, so I'm asking you the questions
kind of from
now.
The public?
From the public, from the people who were just walking by, going around their daily life.
There was quite a large group. It was outside Next and McDonald's and Primark. And
Haymarkets.
So there were, Haymarkets. There were people like all around the circle of, and there was lots of signs
when I went by,
and everything.
I saw that.
A lot of people.
I saw that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was standing right at the back of one because I was rushing to get there and therefore pulled a muscle in my leg running across the road because I don't exercise. Anyway, and so I'd rushed to get there, and so I was standing sort of on the back end by coffee place, and I was sort of straining to hear what was going on. And I did hear someone come up behind me and go, "Oh God, what the hell's this?" And they saw obviously all the trans flags, and then there was kind of F Keir Starmer shouts going on, and
absolutely.
And they went, "Well, they're not wrong," and then they walked on. So I think even if someone doesn't perhaps know, I think there's an awful lot of misunderstanding about what this actually means.
Absolutely, and there's been
people are picking a side.
Absolutely,
before understanding
weaponizing,
it,
isn't it? It's completely weaponizing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And unfortunately, sorry, I've interjected there.
No, carry on.
Unfortunately, that is something which I don't know about you, but I'm seeing a lot with any LGBT issue. Everything has to be weaponized.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that, and the reason I asked you, I'm asking you the questions now. The reason that I asked you about, what was the reaction like? What were the general public saying? Is because, and obviously from what you said, the vast majority of people are just like, okay, it is what it is. And this is the whole thing, isn't it? I just, my opinion on the whole thing, I don't want to sort of get too political or anything about it, but it's just live and let live, isn't it? I honestly, and this is what my whole mantra has been since day dot. I don't understand I don't understand how easily it is for I say I don't understand, I guess I do understand, but about how easily people can get offended and how easily people can take offence and weaponise these issues.
Yeah, I think the LGBTQ community has a bad reputation for kind of fighting back, even though obviously Pride ultimately is a protest.
Absolutely.
It's not. It started as a protest and it is still a protest. We use it as a celebration as well.
Absolutely.
For us, but ultimately it's a protest, and I think especially a lot of young people often weaponise it and
Absolutely.
use it to say you're being discriminatory, you don't understand, you're not, and therefore people who would otherwise be interested to learn, it just puts their backs up and they go,
exactly.
Why don't I talk to someone like you who's going to be aggressive towards me? And it's very difficult. There's an
very
awful lot of
fine line,
people,
isn't there? It's a very fine line.
There's an awful lot of people who don't take offence if you use the wrong kind of pronouns, who are happy to educate, who are happy to answer questions, not like really personal questions. When we had Pinch on last time, they mentioned that people are quite happy to ask them like what's under their underwear and ask for that information, which is so far in the wrong direction. It's just not. Why would you do that to anyone?
It's scary, and unfortunately, that is the thing. There's these pockets of people where and in those communities they thrive, don't they? And they become like that. And this is the thing: the whole weaponization and the polarization within the community. It's scary. And,
it is. And there's an awful lot of. From what now I heard a stat the other day, 86% of lesbians are wanting inclusion of trans women. But then there's that 14% of what we call TERFs. I can't remember what it stands for, but...
Trans Exclusive Radical Feminist.
Thank you very much. Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists. So who don't want... trans women in their single-sex spaces, and now the Supreme Court has ruled that specifically under the Equality Act, women refers to biological women. It's frustrating. I mean, you don't notice the men kind of saying, "Well, we don't want trans men in our spaces."
No.
Why isn't it as? I know why it's not as big a thing. The whole thing is the idea of a man being a predator. But ultimately, I think that if a man was going to go into a woman's toilet and then wait to attack a woman, he would just do it. He would just go and hide in a cubicle.
Exactly.
He doesn't need to dress as a woman. And the fact is that a trans woman and a man who is dressed as a woman are completely different things.
Exactly.
And people are just not
Well,
paying attention.
This is the whole thing, isn't it? There's so much misinformation. There's so much, fake news. It's toxic. It is absolutely toxic, and it worries me. It does worry me a little bit for the future, because this is the problem. It's that, there's so much access to information, and we were talking earlier about social media and this, that, and everything else, and it's scary,
It is scary.
and it's easy for people, particularly again if they've got their backs up, or who feel that perhaps they are not being listened to, i.e. they feel like the LGBT community are kind of just pushing this on for them to then go back, and it's dangerous. It can be very dangerous.
Have you seen on social media that there is now a straight pride flag?
I have, and
which looks really gay.
I know, and the whole concept of straight pride is, I'm not going to go into it.
Every day is straight pride day.
Exactly. It's, well, I don't know how much you want me to go into this, but the whole concept frustrates me. I know.
It's ridiculous. Very frustrating.
Ridiculous.
I think that's quite a nice segue, actually, into the question I had, which was around sort of, as the organisers of Dereham Pride, what are some of those criticisms that you face around, some of the ones that I hear from certain members of my sphere of associates are things like, well, why does it have to be so aggressive, with air quotes, and sometimes they use the word sexualized and fetishized as well, and they talk about, well, they say things like, if I was to walk down the street celebrating my sexuality, I would be shunned, so why should I allow you to do that? Some of these very baseless questions that if you were to interrogate them for 30 seconds, you'd realise they'd fall apart.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
What are some of the ones that you're hearing? And as organisers of Dereham Pride, what are the conversations you want to have with those people to be able to help them understand, A, why you're doing it, and B, why it's necessary?
Right. I think we've been, given that Dereham is such a conservative town, and it really is, I think we've been very lucky so far with the people, with the response, as much as people haven't been at least openly combative about it. We did have, we sent one of our trans kids into, we were giving out leaflets and talking about if they wanted to be part of the Rainbow Trail last year. And there was a shop in Dereham where they went into to ask about it, and the person replied, "What are you?" And that was awful.
Pig ignorance,
and I can honestly say, if that young person hadn't had their support worker with them, that could have ended poorly, because the amount of stuff that we know went on for that person. I just don't think people realise. So what I would like to say to people is those little interactions that they have on a day-to-day, how much changing the way that they speak to people, and even if you think to yourself, God, what is that? Who is that? Who are they trying to be? Who are they pretending to be? Don't say it.
No, absolutely.
Don't say it to that person. Why would you say, if you saw someone about to jump off a cliff, you're not going to then say to them, "Fuck, you're ugly."
Yeah.
You wouldn't say something to purposely depress them, would you?
Exactly. And I think in response to the question as well, I would openly invite anyone who's straight, they can come and speak to me about this, is that, why do I think it's important? Well, society is, our society has been founded or developed on heterosexuality, let's be honest, particularly in the last 250 years, since the 19th century. And, where those terms actually kind of really originated. So, to be honest, this isn't me sitting here and going, oh, well, yes, well, that's just, straight people. Yeah, they have it so easy. But you've got to remember that if you are in a minority group or a community, if you have had people of all backgrounds, generations, and we've had this generation upon generation, like I said, we're talking hundreds of years of this reinforcement of heterosexuality and man and woman, which actually in itself is a societal construct.
Yeah.
It's going to be incredibly hard. Do you see what I mean? You could feel incredibly marginalised. But with all due respect, a straight person wouldn't understand that. Because why would they? Because
Yeah.
society is
they haven't had to
constructed
feel that way.
around
Them.
benefiting them.
Yeah.
That's the truth, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
the truth. And so, you know, I would invite any person, a straight person, to come up to me and say and ask me that question, and I would give them a quite honest answer.
Yeah.
But I think, again, and this is where, going back to what we were discussing earlier, in the LGBT community, it's about, again, it's not about weaponizing things. It's just about going, okay, look, if you are willing to understand and you are willing to be supportive, we will give you, you know, I don't want to say we will teach you because that sounds incredibly patronizing, but, you know, we can educate and we would like, you know, we're not here, are we? We're not here to be sort of be the woke police and go, right, well,
No.
No, it's just about educating, helping people grow their mindsets and just live and let live, isn't it? It's just live and let live.
Just be kinder.
Exactly.
I want people to want to be kinder.
Exactly. And ultimately, let's, you know, when we boil it all down to anything else, you know, does it really matter to someone's sexual orientation? Does it really affect anybody in their day-to-day business?
No.
No. Do I get offended, or do I, quite honestly, in a nice way, do I really care about who sleeps with who? Do I care about you? No, I don't.
No.
It's you are you. I like you for who you are.
Yeah.
What I just don't understand. I never have, but that's me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Rant
but, no,
over.
you
Rant
did.
over.
That was very well worded though, because
Thank you.
it made a lot of sense about and putting it very understandably for people as to why they might struggle to understand the marginalisation that we go through.
Absolutely.
Because we're part of a marginalised group and they're not. Callum said before that he sort of understands as kind of a straight white male that he has a privilege that that other people don't. I mean, even as a woman, there's, you know, aspects of me as a woman that I feel, obviously there's social constructs around being a woman and being inferior to men that we've sort of grown up with, and breaking those barriers down finally. And I think you're right. It's very hard to understand someone in a marginalised community, obviously, unless you're in it, but at least people who have enough, who want to show empathy and understanding, we want to talk to those people.
Absolutely.
And our dialogue is open for those people.
Yeah. And this is the thing, isn't it? It's not about just throwing it on people. It's just about learning and growing and developing
really,
together.
I would say the thing that's said online the most is, why are you shoving it down our throats?
Oh,
that
yes.
phrase
I know.
is said a lot.
The amount of times I see that, it's just...
drives you nuts, doesn't it? And I think, well, I'm not...
What do you think they mean by that? Where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from the fact that, again, and I would like to bring it back to this whole, you know, kind of the generational years upon years, is that, you know, in the history of mankind, in the history of our society, the idea of a pride is a relatively new concept, isn't it? Like, let's be honest, you know, my grandparents are from a generation when they were my age, there was no pride. It's like you said, it first came around, late 60s?
1967.
But I think really, you know, just has built momentum. So it's still a relatively new concept. And I think that for a lot of people, again, when you look at the grand scheme of things and... you know, it's a relatively new concept that perhaps, again, maybe the generation before them or the generation 2 generations before didn't have. To them, it's like, well, this is a new thing. Why have you just sprung this upon us?
Yeah. Why do you want more of our time? Why do you want more of our attention?
Exactly. Why should we care?
Yeah.
But then I'd like to think, well, if you flip the coin there and go, well, hang on, what if it was you? And this is what I have said to people before. I go, it's all very well, you going, well, we don't want it, you know, we don't want it in our community. But what if you are somebody in that community and you feel no one likes to be marginalised, nobody likes to feel left out, and we all have good days and bad days. But like I said, I invite someone to actually go, well, you know, to give me an honest response and go what they would do in that situation, because I think they would really struggle. Yeah.
I literally did a TikTok yesterday about saying, why does all this matter? Why does this stuff in the Supreme Court matter? There is a large majority of trans non-binary people who are not out to their family, friends and work colleagues because they don't feel like they have a safe space to do it in. And if that was someone you knew, would it matter to you then?
Exactly.
Is it only because you think you don't know anyone? The fact is, you could have a friend or a family member who is not out to you because they don't feel like you're a safe space. I mean, I would be horrified if that was me. If anyone felt that they couldn't be the authentic selves with them, with me, I would be mortified.
It's very sad.
But imagine that kind of taking that person and going, okay, now imagine your child feels like this. Now, does it matter to you? Is it, is it only because you think it's somebody else's problem?
I remember my parents kind of being a bit like that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, very relatable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. My parents never were, but then at the same time, we didn't know anyone who was gay when I was growing up.
I remember, to be honest, and sorry, I don't know if we're sort of segueing into something else here, but
we just keep going.
Keep sort of, personally. So my story a little bit is that I always say I don't think I ever really came out because I think that coming out it's a great thing, but in a way, again, if we're talking about in society, I think especially these days, it shouldn't really have to be a thing.
Yeah,
it shouldn't have to be a thing, and I always
like Billie Eilish.
Exactly.
Billie Eilish never actually came out.
No,
she just...
and so to be honest, I was always just like, well, I like who I like, and that's ultimately what matters. And I remember before I was with my partner I'm with now, I remember thinking, I probably should mention it to my parents, only because, respectably, they are a generation older than myself. So, they're very liberal people, but again, it might not be something they're particularly exposed to, and they might still be like, whoa, if I just turned up with, with a guy. So I sort of had the conversation with them, but I never really came out. I didn't see the need to come out.
I was going to say, did you have like a coming out story?
No, I never saw the need to. I'm the sort of person who was just like, I like who I like, and if I, brought home a man or a woman or somebody who was non-binary, that's fine. And
so that's my next question.
Go for it.
Do you refer to yourself as gay or bisexual or pansexual? Or...
I say queer.
Okay.
I say queer. I am still on the journey where I don't think I can really label it, and in all fairness, I don't want to label it. Why? What am I gaining from that? I'm happy as I am.
I like a label.
You like a label.
But I understand that other people don't.
But to be honest, I'm just someone, like I said, I'm incredibly just liberal in that sense, in that, I like who I like. And
like Sarah says, I'm not straight. That's how she identifies.
I agree.
And she just finds it easier
I'm not straight, but I'm a queer person. I'm happy being a queer person. I like who I like, and ultimately that's just, in my view, what everyone should be like. And so therefore coming out shouldn't even be a concept. And to be honest, and again, I don't want to start sort of going down a bit of a rant about it, but you go back historically, and you go back to centuries ago in the time of God's Greek mythology. A lot of Greek mythology was based around Greek gods, and they were in homosexual relationships. Zeus had like a cup holder, essentially what you call them, who was a guy who he had sexual relations with. But again, there was no
Julius Caesar, actual Roman emperor,
absolutely
had homosexual relationships.
The whole concept of coming out, again, stems from probably the Victorian, the 19th century, where again, because obviously you had a lot of advancements in society, in medicine and all of that, just generally. I think there then became the desire to kind of box everything and to categorize everything.
Queen Victoria didn't believe that women could be gay.
Absolutely.
Because she felt that she just looked at women and went, well, women wouldn't want to do that.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, she hasn't met my mates.
And I think now society slowly, there's a long way to go, but slowly I think we'll go back to that, where actually you don't need to come out. You like who you like. And is it anyone else's business? No.
Well, as I've said continually, until equality is for everyone, none of us are equal. Until respect is given to everyone, none of us have respect.
Yeah.
And so Pride will continue to be a protest for the foreseeable. I mean, especially with everything that the USA is like rolling back all their diversity laws and everything.
It's not great, is it?
The world is going through a tough time at the moment for LGBTQ.
Absolutely.
And I find it really surprising that the government are kind of choosing to focus on like the 1%. Like they're focusing on the disabled and focusing on the LGBTQ. And meanwhile, kind of slipping out other news stories under the guise of, oh, well, no one's paying attention, we can put this other stuff out.
Absolutely. And this is one thing that really shocked me, again, was when we were talking earlier about the backlash to this ruling and the reaction. And I think to myself, and again, I look at the government and what's going on in the world, I think there are so many more important issues, quite honestly. And yes, I'm one person, somebody else might agree with me, but come on, guys, let's think of the big context here. You look at the world at the moment, you've got wars happening abroad, there's a cost of living crisis, there's, the generation that I'm in, is, according to a statistic that I read, we will be the first generation where we are poorer than the generation before us. Right. And there's a lot of issues in society at the moment. And I think perhaps maybe the government are choosing to focus on this 1% to deter from that, because the reality is there's a lot of problems going on and maybe they haven't got the answers. That's all I'm going to say in terms of the political side
from
of
a
things.
media and advertising perspective as well. There's also the notion that emotion sells, and
absolutely
fear and anger generates more clicks than anything else. It's kind of like a weird
state of affairs,
weird kind of Monsters Inc. situation where screams are powerful, and
I was thinking, where's he going with this?
Especially where media has moved to, where print is dying, if not dead, and it all now comes from clicks and ads, and ad spend, and you need people to spend longer on your site in order to generate more money from advertising, in order to pay your shareholders. If you can generate a nothing article that is just pure clickbait and doesn't actually educate, it just riles people up, then that's what people are going to click.
I have noticed that local media, our local newspaper, do that an awful lot.
Local media is not great, I'm going to say. And in fact, there was a Dereham Pride article, which you may well remember, which was grossly misquoted. It was grossly misquoted. The whole article was incredibly baseless. I'm just going to say it. And quite honestly, that journalist had not done their research, but they were pandering to people. They're pandering to the clickbait. They're pandering to, I guess they thought, the majority, and again, because it's an LGBT issue, it's going to cause reaction. It's something that people can, it's a contemporary issue, I guess. Do you see what I mean? It really rolled me up, because I just thought, you have not done your homework, and it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to other journalists. Sorry.
She asked me a load of questions, and then the quotes that she slipped out of there. Or it's almost like I think she literally kind of pieced other sentences together to get what she wanted to hear. So the article was about the fact that there is no Dereham Does Pride this year, because no big event, because we had several committee members drop out and we weren't able to organise it in enough time, because it's a big event that needs organising.
What was the headline? Queer community in chaos. Nothing can be organised.
It wasn't
far off that.
And basically they said, literally, it's been cancelled because of not enough interest.
Lack of interest. Which is ridiculous, because we had thousands, we had over 1,000.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe not thousands, but we had a lot of people.
The very first event, we were expecting about 400 people, and we think we had about 800, didn't we? That was the first one. I thought it was
more than that. It was well.
I think
it was a busy
probably
day.
Was more than that.
There absolutely was the interest, but again, it's just a journalist probably wanting to ruffle some feathers, make a name for themselves, and you know something else as well, Cal? The problem, and going back to what you were saying earlier about it being shoved down people's throats, I think that doesn't help, because these terrible articles, they get put out and they're so misinforming, and then that kind of can play into the narrative of people who don't want to understand our community already. So then when we do put out something positive, and I actually put something on our social media, a statement saying, no, this is actually what happened, that was 100% true, people then start going, oh, hang on, you're shoving it down our throat. No, I'm correcting the misinformation that you have been fed, sorry, but I'm just going to say this, that you have been fed by an uneducated person.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's true though, isn't it?
How do you both, I'm interested to hear how you process and deal and build resilience with being marginalised. It's quite a big topic, and we've spoken about some really big global things today, but I'm just really interested. Like, personally, I have come off a lot of social media. I don't read the news anymore because it's just depressing and bringing me down. But again, I acknowledge I'm in a privileged position where I can do that, and my identity and my my actual being is not under attack and is
Yeah.
not at threat. So how do you is it that you don't have a choice and you've just had to build resilience through existence, or do you have some sort of practices and techniques in place that kind of help you regulate and look after your emotional well-being when you're both very active and advocative people?
Yeah.
That takes a lot of energy that I admire and envy hugely. So what are your sort of practices for that?
For me, I find like you, I have identified some things that I know get me down. So like reading the news, I'm aware that there are mostly negative news stories and that they do get me down. I recognise that like doom scrolling on Facebook as an ADHDer, I do that a lot, as a lot of people do. And it does get you down because generally a lot of people are moaning. There's a lot of bad news on there. And I've noticed also videos that I watch online. I love Charlotte Dobro, Canadian creator. Thank you, creator. But I've realised that she makes me laugh. But I've realised that a lot of her videos are put together from like emails she's had or whatever from people complaining or people kind of in this drama around people. And I've realised that when I kind of continually watch it, I begin to feel quite down.
Absolutely.
So I have to, sometimes I can recognise it and say, okay, I need to take myself out of this headspace. The other thing I do is I watch a lot of Dr. Phil on YouTube, and I watch like catfish and like scammers, love scammers, and I'm really interested in it, but it also brings me down. And I don't want to watch things that bring me down. And I realise that when I go out and spend time with people I love, like yesterday I went and had coffee with two people I really like, and I came out feeling energised and like going, oh, this is brilliant. What am I going to go and do next? And I also recognise that if I am feeling down in the morning, I put on like Magic at the Musicals because I love musicals music, or like I've got like a popular country selection on my phone, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I'm doing at the moment. So I put on those things because I know that it lifts me. Even if I put it on in the background, 2 minutes later I'll be singing along, and that lifts me. Although those are kind of quite basic things as opposed to resilience towards people being combative towards my being pansexual or part of the community, I have to find little things that I enjoy that will lift me. But
I think that is just part of being who we are. And in answer to your question, I agree with Kerry. And so for myself, again, I limit the time I spend on social media. Kind of ironic considering I do the social media for our page, but I limit my time on social media. I surround myself with people, with interests, with hobbies where I get satisfaction from, and I think that's good for me mentally, because it also means that you're engaged. If you're engaging in something you're passionate about, it helps with your endorphins and all of that stuff. And I think it's just important to focus on the most important things in life, which is happiness, health, and your friends, your family, the community you're in. A saying that I've always lived by, and anyone who knows me well enough knows that I practically would print it on a t-shirt if I could, is strength through adversity. I'm a firm believer, and I've had times where I've gone down streets and I've had people shout at me and look at me funny and say stuff to me, but I've got pretty thick skin anyway, but you've just got to let it go over you. If you bow down to that, if you give in to that societal pressure, we will never advance as a society. Our community will never get the equality that, as you quite rightly said, we are not equal until everyone is equal. And if you just, and I know it's easy for me to say, and I get, different people have different ways, and I understand that, but I think if we give in to that, it's taking a step backwards. And so I think it's just, there are hard times at the moment, and there's going to be more hard times, but there's also going to be great times. And it's just having the strength and just that, kind of carry on Britishness, perhaps, I don't know, but it's just being strong and just, and like I said, finding passion in what is important to you and surrounding yourself with people who love you and who care for you, and that you do the same for them. And that makes a massive difference. And would strongly advise anyone
So
to do that.
I'm just going to nip in here and say that my favourite quote is, and it could also be used for the same situation, is never take criticism from someone you wouldn't go to for advice.
Absolutely.
Which,
I don't.
again, is very appropriate for if someone's going to shout at you in the street, to think to yourself, are you someone whose opinion I value? Not really, no.
I think it's also knowing as well who your tribe is. So I'm a big fan of the work of Professor Steve Peters, The Chimp Paradox. I highly recommend that book to anyone. And he talks in there about identifying your tribe. And if you look back at how our brains are developed, we're developed to have 5 or 6 people around us that are our tribe that we kind of rely on, and they rely on us, and that we source as our point of reference. And to kind of remember that, and to say that actually your tribe isn't even your immediate family. You get to choose your tribe.
Absolutely.
You're one of my tribe.
You're also in my tribe as well, Kerry.
Lucky
I have a
thing.
list on my phone that is my tribe. And sometimes if people are giving me shit, or, you know, things like that, I look back at that, or if I need some support, I go back and say, who is my tribe? Who should I go to? Because sometimes, you know, there are people, we were talking earlier, there are people that sometimes I go to for validation and support, and it's not there. And you have to just remember that, you know, don't go fishing in
bleak waters,
puddles.
You know.
Well, I always say, you know, quite simply, opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got them. And to be honest, you know, it's with all due respect. Again, you have the people whose validation you value, and that's the most important thing. And yeah, people might like you, people might hate you, but if I don't know you, I don't really care.
So let's just finish.
Without sounding ignorant, you know.
We're just going to tie it up now. So tell me what Dereham Does Pride have got planned for this year. So we're 2025.
2025. So we're not having a main event this year,
no.
But we have got some fantastic smaller events, and that makes a massive difference because it gives us time to put more effort into the smaller events. We've got a dog show, which is coming up in June, which is the 3rd dog show we've done. There's multiple events. We've got guest judges.
Yeah,
there's
that's always really popular.
Prizes. Yeah, it's always very popular.
Loads of different classes you can enter into.
Absolutely. Obviously, we'll be doing events closer to Christmas. Usually we go to some local communities where they do the light switch-ons, but we're also planning on doing a gala, a ball, a kind of black tie event, which is...
We're very excited about that.
We are very excited about that. I'm, absolutely buzzing. Yeah. I'm like spearheading this thing. But it's, obviously all going to be to raise money for our committee so we can have a main event.
Yeah.
But at this event...
The other thing is we are partnering with the Mid-Norfolk Railway and offering a drag queen afternoon tea on the rails. That'll be in September. So we'll look out for our socials and we'll be putting that out.
Follow us at Dereham Does Pride on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok now.
Ooh.
And on TikTok. Oh, yeah. Gen Z for you, TikTok. It's where it's at. But yeah, we've got some great events coming up. Some really good events.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ben, for coming on today.
Thank you very much. I honestly really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed having a good conversation with you.
I think we've set a record for the longest episode.
I'm not surprised because I am a talker. I'm a big talker, but thank you anyway.
Brilliant. So this was Kerry King and Ben Greentree for the Queerly Biz Podcast, making your workplace a safe space. See you next time.
Bless you. Thank you.